Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel UES Horizon and watched the stars disappear one by one. Each vanishing point of light meant another alien warship had moved into position around his vessel. The tactical display showed red dots forming a perfect sphere around them. 237 enemy ships and counting. Sir, the last group just dropped out of hyperspace, Commander Lisa Brooks said from her position at the tactical station. Her voice stayed calm, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. They have us completely surrounded. Jake nodded and kept his expression neutral. His crew of 43 people were watching him and waiting for orders. Some of them looked scared. Others looked angry. A few of the younger ones seemed excited, like this was some kind of adventure. Jake knew better. This was a death trap. The alien ships belonged to the Zephyrian Collective. Jake had read the intelligence reports about them. They controlled most of this sector of space and had been expanding their empire for over 1,000 years. No species had ever successfully resisted them for long. They were advanced and ruthless and very good at destroying anyone who got in their way. "Communications coming in, sir," Lieutenant Sam Parker said from the engineering console. He was young and nervous, but good at his job. "The lead ship wants to talk. Put them through," Jake said. He straightened his uniform and prepared to meet his enemy. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of an alien warship. The creature sitting in the command chair looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. Its skin was dark green with patches of bright blue. Sharp teeth filled its mouth and its eyes were cold and calculating. This had to be Admiral Corex based on the markings on its uniform. "Human vessel," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Admiral Corex of the Zephyrian Collective. You have entered restricted space without permission. Your ship will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Jake stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Horizon. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We had no idea this space was restricted." Admiral Corex made a sound that might have been laughter. "Ignorance is not an excuse, human. Your species has been expanding too quickly. You are becoming a threat to the established order. This ends now." "We are just explorers," Jake said. "We have no weapons capable of threatening your fleet. We pose no danger to anyone." "All humans pose a danger," Admiral Corex replied. "Your species is unpredictable and refuses to follow proper protocols. You ask too many questions and go places you should not go. This behavior must be stopped before it spreads." Dr. Amy Collins stepped up beside Jake. She was the ship's xenobiology expert, and one of the smartest people he had ever met. "Admiral, we would be very interested in learning about your culture and your empire. Perhaps we could arrange some kind of cultural exchange." The alien's eyes narrowed. "There will be no exchange. There will be only your surrender or your destruction. You have 1 hour to decide." The screen went black. Jake turned to face his crew. They were all looking at him with a mixture of hope and fear. These were good people who had signed up to explore the galaxy and make contact with new civilizations. They did not deserve to die because some alien empire felt threatened. "Options," Jake said simply. "We could try to run," Commander Brooks said, "but they have us completely surrounded. Even if we could break through their lines, they would catch us before we could reach hyperspace. Our weapons are no match for even one of their ships," Lieutenant Parker added. "We have some defensive capabilities, but nothing that could damage a fleet this size." Dr. Collins was studying her scanner readings. "Their ships are impressive. The technology is at least 50 years ahead of ours in most areas. but there are some interesting inconsistencies in their formations. Jake looked at her with interest. What kind of inconsistencies? They are arranged in a perfect geometric pattern, she said. Very orderly and precise. It suggests they prefer structure and predictability in their tactics. That could be useful information, Commander Brooks said. Rigid formations can be exploited if you know how. Jake walked over to the forward viewport and stared out at the enemy fleet. The alien ships were sleek and deadly-looking. Each one was probably capable of destroying the horizon with a single volley. But something about this situation felt wrong to him. Why surround them with such overwhelming force? Why not just destroy them immediately and be done with it? They want something, Jake said suddenly. This is not just about eliminating a threat. If they wanted us dead, we would be dead already. What do you think they want, sir? Sam asked. Information, Dr. Collins said before Jake could answer. They want to know what we know. They want to understand our capabilities and our intentions. Jake nodded. That made sense. The Zephyrians had been the dominant power in this region for centuries. They were used to being in control and knowing everything that happened in their territory. A human ship appearing in their space with unknown capabilities would make them nervous. They are also testing us, Commander Brooks added. They want to see how we react under pressure. Do we panic? Do we fight? Do we try to negotiate? Our response will tell them a lot about human nature. Jake smiled for the first time since the alien fleet had appeared. His crew was thinking like humans instead of like victims. That was a good sign. Humans were at their best when they were solving problems and adapting to new situations. All right, people, here is what we are going to do, Jake said. We are going to give Admiral Corex exactly what he wants. We are going to show him what humans are really like, sir, Sam said nervously. What exactly does that mean? It means we are going to surprise him, Jake replied. Dr. Collins, I want you to start scanning their ships. Get me everything you can about their technology and their formations. Commander Brooks, I want you to run diagnostics on all our systems. Make sure everything is working perfectly. Sam, I need you to modify our communications array for maximum range and power. What are you planning, sir? Lisa asked. Jake turned back to the viewport and watched the alien ships hanging in space around them like hungry predators. I am planning to do what humans do best. I am planning to turn this situation to our advantage. The crew exchanged glances but began following his orders. Jake knew they trusted him, even if they did not understand his plan yet. That trust meant everything in a situation like this. A crew that believed in their captain could accomplish things that seemed impossible. The next hour would determine whether the human race continued to expand into the galaxy or became just another footnote in the history of the Zephyrian collective. Jake intended to make sure it was not the latter. The diplomatic vessel appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly 1 week after the railgun test, broadcasting on frequencies that Dr. Carter's team had theorized might be used for interstellar communication. The ship itself was beautiful, in a way that human technology could not yet achieve. Flowing lines of metal and energy that seemed more grown than built. Captain Murphy stood in the command center of Liberty's Edge, staring at the alien vessel on his main screen while trying to process the reality that humanity was about to make first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Admiral Bolton had arrived from Earth with a hastily assembled diplomatic team, including Ambassador Lisa Grant, who had volunteered for what might be the most important conversation in human history. The message from the alien ship was simple and direct: transmitted in mathematical concepts that any spacefaring civilization would understand. We would like to talk. Dr. Carter, working frantically in her laboratory to decode the alien transmission protocols, managed to establish two-way communication within hours. Her team's work on advanced communication systems had prepared them better than anyone realized for this moment. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the Earth orbital platform Liberty's Edge," Murphy transmitted carefully. "We welcome peaceful contact with your civilization." The response came back almost immediately, translated through mathematical concepts into recognizable English. "I am Ambassador Veltara of the Galactic Council. We represent numerous civilizations throughout this region of space. Your recent demonstration has raised questions we would like to discuss." Admiral Bolton stepped forward to the communication console. "Ambassador Veltara, I am Admiral Chris Bolton of Earth's Defense Forces. We are honored by your contact and eager to learn about the galactic community." "Admiral Bolton, we are equally eager to learn about humanity. Your recent weapons test has challenged many assumptions we held about developing civilizations. We would like to arrange a formal meeting to discuss the implications." Within hours, the alien diplomatic vessel had moved closer to Earth's orbital platforms, and preparations began for the first formal meeting between humanity and the Galactic Council. The alien delegation included Ambassador Veltara of the Peaceful, Assembly, Military Advisor General Thum of the Unified Defense Force, and Scientific Consultant Dr. Kixara of the Knowledge Seekers. Captain Murphy, Dr. Carter, Admiral Bolton, and Ambassador Grant would represent humanity, along with Dr. Kevin Price and several hastily briefed diplomats who were still trying to believe they were about to negotiate with aliens. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space platform that the aliens constructed in the space between Earth and its moon. The structure was itself a demonstration of technology far beyond human capabilities, assembled from energy and matter in ways that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Ambassador Veltara was the first alien most humans had ever seen, and her appearance was both familiar and strange. Humanoid in basic structure but clearly evolved under different conditions, she moved with grace that suggested low-gravity origins and spoke with a voice that somehow conveyed warmth despite being translated through electronic systems. "Welcome, representatives of humanity," Veltara said as the human delegation entered the meeting chamber. "We have watched your species develop for some time, but your recent demonstration has forced us to reconsider many of our assumptions about your capabilities." Admiral Bolton, designated as the primary speaker for the human delegation, replied carefully. "Ambassador Veltara, we are honored by this contact. We had no idea we were being observed, but we welcome the opportunity to learn about the galactic community." General Thum, a massive being whose species had clearly evolved as warriors, leaned forward with obvious interest. "Admiral, your railgun demonstration has raised significant questions about human military doctrine. How did your species achieve such precision and velocity with projectile weapons?" Dr. Carter spoke for the first time, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "General Thum, we approached the physics problem differently than others might have. Instead of seeking elegant energy solutions, we focused on maximizing the effectiveness of kinetic weapons through precise mathematical modeling." Dr. Kixara, whose crystal-like body pulsed with different colors as she processed information, joined the conversation with obvious excitement. "Dr. Carter, our analysis of your projectile's trajectory suggests computational capabilities that rival our most advanced civilizations. How did you develop such mathematical precision?" "We thought bigger than anyone expected," Carter replied. "Simply, our targeting computers account for gravitational effects across galactic distances. We calculated the influence of every significant mass within our firing range." The alien delegates exchanged glances that somehow conveyed volumes of meaning despite their different physiologies. Veltara spoke first, her tone carrying new respect. "Dr. Carter, what you describe as thinking bigger represents solutions to physics problems that have challenged galactic civilizations for millennia. Your species has achieved breakthrough understanding through methods none of us considered possible." Admiral Bolton sensed an opportunity. "Ambassador, are you saying that our approach to these problems is unusual among galactic civilizations?" "Unusual is an understatement," General Thum replied. "Your species has reminded us that there are always different ways to solve problems. The galaxy has become somewhat stagnant in our thinking, relying on the same energy-based technologies for millions of years. Your projectile demonstration forced us to question fundamental assumptions about physics and engineering." Dr. Kixara's crystalline form flickered with what seemed like excitement. "Admiral Bolton, your railgun projectile has become something of a galactic legend in the past week. It is currently the fastest artificial object anyone in this region of space has ever created. Some civilizations have begun incorporating human mathematical approaches into their own research." Captain Murphy, who had remained quiet during the technical discussions, finally spoke. "Are you saying that our weapons test impressed the galaxy?" Veltara's expression, somehow recognizable despite her alien features, showed something that might have been amusement. "Captain Murphy, your weapons test terrified the galaxy. Species that have existed for millions of years suddenly realized that their military doctrines might be obsolete. The Crimson Fleet has canceled their planned invasion of your system and is completely reconsidering their approach to warfare." "They were planning to invade us?" Admiral Bolton asked with alarm. "Several aggressive civilizations considered your species potential targets for conquest," General Thum admitted. "Your demonstration convinced them that such plans would be unwise. You have achieved something most developing civilizations never manage: respect through strength." Dr. Carter looked puzzled. "But we only fired one projectile at a decommissioned facility. How could that be so significant?" Dr. Kixara pulsed with colors that seemed to indicate amazement. "Dr. Carter, your one projectile is currently traveling through space at velocities that our most advanced ships cannot match. It will be visible to every spacefaring civilization for the next several thousand years. You have created a permanent reminder that human engineering can achieve things the galaxy considered impossible." Ambassador Veltara leaned forward, her tone becoming more formal. "This brings us to the purpose of our meeting. The Galactic Council would like to extend an invitation for humanity to join our community, not as junior members to be protected or contained, but as equals whose unique perspective might help us solve challenges that have puzzled the galaxy for eons." The human delegation sat in stunned silence for several moments before Admiral Bolton found his voice. "Ambassador, are you offering us membership in a galactic government?" "We are offering you partnership," Veltara replied. "Your species has demonstrated that innovation comes from thinking differently, not just thinking longer. The galaxy needs that perspective. We have much to learn from each other." Dr. Carter asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What would this partnership involve? General Thum answered with what might have been respect in his voice. "Cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and mutual defense agreements." Your mathematical approaches could revolutionize galactic engineering, while our technologies could accelerate human development by centuries. Ambassador Grant, who had remained quiet while absorbing the implications of everything she had heard, finally spoke in her professional diplomatic voice. This is obviously a decision that requires consultation with Earth's governments and people. How much time do we have to consider your offer? As much time as you need, Veltara replied. We have waited this long to make contact. We can wait longer for you to make informed decisions about your future. As the meeting concluded and preparations began for the human delegation to return to Earth, Captain Murphy found himself thinking about the projectile that was still traveling through space, carrying humanity's message to distant stars. What had begun as a simple weapons test had become an announcement to the galaxy that humanity would not be ignored or underestimated. 3 days after the railgun test, the galaxy was still trying to understand what it had witnessed. Emergency sessions convened on dozens of worlds as civilizations that had existed for millions of years struggled to comprehend how a barely spacefaring species had solved physics problems that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds for eons. Emperor Krexnoth stood in the center of his War Council chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the human projectiles' continuing journey through space. His empire had conquered thousands of worlds and outlasted countless other civilizations, but nothing in his vast experience had prepared him for what these newcomers had accomplished. "My lord," his chief military advisor said nervously, "our tactical analysts have completed their assessment of human capabilities based on this demonstration. The results are deeply troubling." Krexnoth turned his ancient eyes toward the advisor, a gesture that had intimidated beings across the galaxy for millennia. "Speak plainly. What do these primitives threaten?" "Sir, if the humans can accelerate projectiles to such velocities with such precision, traditional fleet formations become meaningless. They could engage our ships from distances we thought were safe and strike with force equivalent to our most powerful energy weapons." The Emperor felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: uncertainty. His military doctrine was built on the assumption that energy weapons were superior to projectiles in every way. The humans had just proven that assumption catastrophically wrong. In the peaceful gardens of the Harmony Coalition's central world, Ambassador Zentara meditated on the implications of humanity's demonstration while surrounded by representatives from dozens of peace-loving species. The Coalition had spent millennia building a philosophy based on the idea that advanced civilizations naturally moved away from violence as they matured. "The humans challenge our fundamental assumptions," Zentara said to the assembled delegates. "We believed that technological advancement led inevitably to peaceful solutions. These beings have achieved breakthrough technologies specifically to improve their capacity for warfare." Elder Willow Song of the Tree People rustled her leaves in distress. "Perhaps we have been naive to assume all species follow our path to enlightenment. The humans may represent a completely different approach to advancement." The Merchant Guild was having a very different conversation in their trade centers scattered across the galaxy. Guildmaster Profit Calculator reviewed economic projections with barely contained excitement as he realized the commercial potential of human military technology. "The demand for human weapons technology will be astronomical," he announced to his fellow merchants. "Every military in the galaxy will want to understand how they achieved such results with projectile weapons. The humans have just become the most valuable trading partners we have encountered in centuries." His assistant, a spider-like being, covered in calculating organs, clicked nervously. "Master, should we not be concerned about the destabilizing effects of such technology?" Wars could reshape the entire galactic economy. Profit Calculator waved dismissively. Wars are profitable, especially when one side has superior technology. We must establish trade relations with these humans immediately before our competitors realize their potential value. The Quantum Collective's greatest minds worked around the clock in their crystalline research facilities, trying to reverse engineer the mathematical principles that had made humanity's impossible shot possible. What they discovered challenged every assumption they had about physics and engineering. Lead researcher Prime Equation interfaced directly with the collective's most powerful computers, processing calculations at speeds that would have burned out organic brains. Even with such computational power, the human mathematical approach remained partially mysterious. The humans solved the trajectory problem by treating space itself as a computational medium, Prime Equation announced to the collective consciousness. They calculated gravitational effects with precision we thought was theoretical impossibility. Their targeting system accounted for stellar influences across galactic distances. The collective pulsed with confusion and admiration. How did they develop such computational capabilities without achieving our level of technological advancement? They approached the problem differently, Prime Equation replied. While we sought elegant solutions, they brute-forced their way through calculations using raw computational power and determination. Their method is crude, but devastatingly effective. On Earth, Captain Murphy found himself suddenly at the center of attention he had never wanted. Government officials from every major nation requested meetings, military leaders demanded briefings, and scientists begged for access to the railgun data. The test that was supposed to be a simple weapons demonstration had become humanity's introduction to galactic politics. Dr. Carter was equally overwhelmed, but for different reasons. Her inbox contained thousands of messages from physicists around the world trying to understand her calculations, while intelligence agencies asked her to explain exactly what her team had achieved. She had solved theoretical problems for the sake of making better weapons, not realizing she was rewriting the laws of physics as everyone understood them. Dr. Kevin Price found her in her laboratory late at night, staring at holographic displays, showing the continuing path of their projectile through deep space. The tungsten rod had passed several more star systems and showed no signs of slowing down. "Lisa," Price said gently, "you realize what you have done, do you not? This is bigger than just a successful weapons test." Carter nodded slowly, her eyes following the projectile's trajectory through regions of space no human had ever seen. "Kevin, I think we just announced to the galaxy that humanity is not what they expected. The question is whether that will be good or bad for us." "What do you mean?" Carter manipulated the hologram to show projected galactic reaction scenarios her computers had calculated based on alien behavior patterns. Think about it from their perspective. They have been watching us for months, probably laughing at our primitive technology. Then we do something they thought was impossible with methods they do not understand. So they will respect us now? Or, they will fear us, Carter replied quietly. Fear can be more dangerous than contempt. Far across the galaxy, Commander Zix Thara was having similar thoughts aboard the monitoring station. The past 3 days had completely changed her assessment of humanity from amusing primitives to potential galactic power. The implications terrified her more than she wanted to admit. "Science Officer Grum," she said formally, "what is your professional assessment of human technological capabilities based on this demonstration?" Grum's massive form moved to the display showing their accumulated data on the railgun test. Commander, the humans have demonstrated mastery of principles we thought were beyond their development level. Their mathematical approach to trajectory calculation exceeds our own capabilities in several areas. And their potential threat level? Grum was quiet for a long moment before answering. If they can apply this precision and power to weapons targeting our ships or worlds, they represent a significant military threat despite their primitive appearance. We may have seriously underestimated these beings. Zixthera felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Her reports would influence how the Galactic Council approached humanity, and those decisions could determine whether first contact would be peaceful or hostile. The Crimson Fleet was already making preparations for the possibility of hostile contact. General Thaktor had canceled his planned invasion of the Sol system and was instead positioning his forces for defensive operations. For the first time in his career, he was afraid of a species he had initially planned to enslave. "The humans have changed the rules of engagement," he announced to his fleet commanders. "Our traditional tactics assume enemy weapons with limited range and precision. These beings can apparently strike targets with devastating accuracy across distances we thought were safe." His tactical officer, a scarred veteran of hundreds of battles, reviewed the data with growing unease. "Sir, if their projectile weapons can achieve such velocities, our fleet formations are vulnerable to attack from ranges where we cannot effectively respond. We need to completely rethink our approach to human contact." "Indeed," Thaktor replied, grimly. "Cancel all offensive operations against the Sol system. We will wait to see what these humans do next before deciding how to proceed." As news of humanity's demonstration spread through galactic communication networks, one fact became clear to every observer. The small blue planet in the Sol system had just announced that it would not be ignored, conquered, or dismissed as easily as anyone had assumed. The moment arrived with less ceremony than anyone expected. Captain Murphy looked around the command center of Liberty's Edge one final time, seeing his crew ready at their stations and Admiral Bolton watching intently from the observation area. Dr. Carter's voice came through the communication system calm and steady, as if she were announcing dinner rather than humanity's first full-power railgun test. "All systems nominal," Carter said from her laboratory. "Magnetic field generators at maximum stable output. Targeting computer shows green across all parameters. We are ready to fire on your command, Captain." Murphy felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. 3 years of work, billions of dollars, and the hopes of every military leader on Earth came down to the next few seconds. He looked at Lieutenant Amy Foster, whose hand rested on the firing control. "You may fire when ready, Lieutenant," Murphy said quietly. Foster pressed the firing stud without hesitation. For a fraction of a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire station vibrated with a deep harmonic hum that seemed to come from the very structure itself. The magnetic field generators discharged their stored energy in a precisely controlled sequence that accelerated the tungsten projectile through the railgun barrel in less time than it takes to blink. The tungsten rod, enhanced with Dr. Carter's crystalline matrix and accelerated by forces that would have impressed alien engineers if they had been paying proper attention, left the railgun at a velocity that immediately broke every human record for projectile speed. But velocity was only the beginning of what made this shot extraordinary. Dr. Carter had spent months calculating gravitational effects that most civilizations ignored when designing energy weapons. Her targeting computer accounted for the gravitational pull of every significant mass within the firing range, creating a trajectory so precise it seemed almost magical. The projectile did not simply fly toward its target. It rode invisible rails of gravity and momentum that carried it exactly where Carter had predicted it would go. The decommissioned asteroid mining facility 50,000 kilometers away never had a chance. The tungsten rod, traveling at speeds that defied everything anyone thought they knew about projectile weapons, struck the target with the force of a small nuclear explosion. The facility simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that the explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. But that was not what rendered the galaxy speechless. On the monitoring station, Commander Zix Thara and Science Officer Grum watched their instruments with growing disbelief as the impossible became reality. The projectile had not stopped at the target. It had continued traveling, its velocity barely diminished by the impact, cutting through space like a needle through fabric. "That cannot be correct," Zixathera whispered, her ethereal form flickering with confusion. "Projectiles do not maintain velocity after impact. The laws of physics forbid it." Grum's massive stone hands moved across the console, checking and rechecking readings that made no sense according to everything he had learned about physics in his 4 centuries of life. "Commander, the projectile has passed through the Helios Nebula. It is 12,000 light-years from Earth and still accelerating." Across the galaxy, monitoring stations fell silent one by one as the implications of what they were witnessing began to sink in. The human projectile was not just fast. It was impossibly fast, and it showed no signs of slowing down. Even more disturbing, its trajectory was so perfect that it seemed to be using gravitational effects from distant stars to maintain and even increase its velocity. In the crystalline caves of Proxima, Elder Crystal Song's gentle humming stopped abruptly as the shared consciousness of her people processed data that challenged everything they believed about primitive civilizations. The younglings who had gathered to watch primitive entertainment now pulsed with confused light as their elders struggled to explain what they were seeing. "Teacher," one young mind asked hesitantly, "how do the humans make their rock fly faster than our best ships?" Crystal Song had no answer. The projectile was moving at speeds that her people's most advanced vessels could not match, and it was doing so while following a trajectory that demonstrated mathematical precision beyond anything the crystalline hive mind had achieved in millions of years of development. General Thaktor of the Crimson Fleet stared at his tactical displays in something approaching panic. His military advisors were frantically recalculating their invasion plans as they realized that the humans had just demonstrated a weapon capability that could threaten his fleet from distances he had thought were safe. "How long would it take our fastest dreadnought to match that projectile's speed?" Thaktor demanded. His aide consulted several databases before answering in a voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, our most advanced ships would require approximately 3 months to reach equivalent velocity, and they could not maintain it for the distances this projectile is traveling." Thaktor felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest: genuine fear. If the humans could accelerate projectiles to such speeds with such precision, his entire military doctrine was suddenly obsolete. On Liberty's edge, Captain Murphy and his crew were initially puzzled by what their instruments were telling them. The asteroid mining facility had been destroyed more thoroughly than anyone had predicted, but the readings suggested their projectile was still traveling at impossible speeds through deep space. Dr. Carter's voice came through the communication system with barely contained excitement. "Captain, are you seeing these trajectory readings? Our projectile is following the gravitational path I calculated exactly." It is using stellar gravitational effects to maintain velocity across distances I thought were theoretical maximums. Doctor, Admiral Bolton interrupted. Are you telling me that tungsten rod is still flying? Admiral, Carter replied. That tungsten rod is currently traveling through space at velocities that should be impossible for a kinetic weapon. It is following a trajectory so perfect that it will eventually exit our galaxy entirely. The silence in the command center was profound as everyone tried to process the implications of what Carter had just said. They had not just fired a successful test shot. They had launched an object that was about to become the fastest artificial construct anyone in the galaxy had ever created. Technical analyst Vorp of the Silicon Synthesis was the first to understand the true scope of what the humans had achieved. As he interfaced with galactic monitoring networks, he realized that the projectile's trajectory would take it past every major star system in their local galactic arm, traveling at speeds that would make it visible to any civilization with basic astronomical equipment. Vorp transmitted an emergency alert to every monitoring station in the galaxy. All observers must track the human projectile immediately. This object will be visible to every spacefaring civilization for the next several thousand years. We are witnessing the creation of a galactic landmark. The quantum collective's greatest mathematicians worked frantically to reverse engineer the human calculations that had made such a shot possible. What they discovered challenged everything they thought they knew about physics and mathematics. The humans had approached the problem from an angle that no galactic civilization had ever considered. Instead of seeking elegant energy solutions, they had brute-forced their way through computational problems that others had deemed unsolvable. Emperor Krexnoth of the Void Dominion, whose empire spanned 10,000 worlds and had existed for millions of years, called an emergency council session as he stared at readings that made no sense. His greatest scientists and military leaders gathered around holographic displays showing the human projectile's impossible journey through space. "Explain to me," Krexnoth said in a voice that had commanded respect across the galaxy for millennia, "how a species that achieved spaceflight yesterday has created something that travels faster than our most advanced technology allows." His chief scientist, a being that had devoted centuries to studying the laws of physics, could only shake his head in defeat. "My lord, they solved physics problems that we considered unsolvable. They approached electromagnetic acceleration in ways we never imagined possible." Back on Earth, governments across the planet were suddenly very interested in talking to Captain Murphy and Dr. Carter. Communication requests flooded in from every major nation as world leaders realized that humanity had just announced itself to the universe in a way no one had expected. The projectile continued its journey through space, following a path so perfect that it would loop back toward the galaxy in approximately 50,000 years, having used gravitational effects from distant stars to maintain its incredible velocity. It had become more than just a weapon test. It was humanity's first real message to the galaxy, written in mathematics and physics that no one else had mastered. The news of the human weapon test had spread across dozens of worlds faster than anyone expected. In the crystalline caves of Proxima, young members of the hive mind gathered around their elders to watch the entertainment their teachers had promised. The translucent beings pulsed with gentle light as they shared thoughts about the primitive species that still believed in throwing rocks at their enemies. Elder Crystal's song hummed with amusement as she projected the human space station onto the shared consciousness. "Observe, young ones, how species develop when they lack proper guidance. These humans cling to ancient methods, because they have not yet learned that energy is superior to matter in all things. The younglings flickered, with curiosity, their thoughts dancing between crystals like light through prisms. One brave young mind asked, "Why do they not simply dissolve their enemies with focused light beams like civilized beings?" "Because they are still children," Crystal Song replied with infinite patience. "In time, they will learn. All species eventually abandon such crude approaches." Halfway across the galaxy, General Thaktor of the Crimson Fleet studied tactical displays from his warship while planning the eventual conquest of the Sol system. The massive red-skinned warrior had built his reputation on crushing primitive civilizations, and the humans looked like they would provide excellent sport once they finished destroying themselves with their own weapons. "How long do our analysts predict before they blow up their own planet?" Thaktor asked his aide, a smaller alien who trembled whenever the general spoke. "Based on historical data from similar species, 3 to 5 years before total civilization collapse," the aide squeaked. "The projectile weapons phase typically leads to global warfare within that time frame." Thaktor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Perfect. We will let them weaken themselves first, then move in to collect the survivors for the slave markets. These humans show promise as laborers once properly broken." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Carter was working late in her laboratory, unaware that her calculations were about to change everything anyone thought they knew about physics. She sat surrounded by holographic displays showing trajectory models that incorporated gravitational effects most galactic civilizations had never bothered to master. Dr. Kevin Price, her research assistant, brought her another cup of coffee and looked over her shoulder at the complex equations floating in the air around them. "Lisa, are you certain about these velocity projections? The numbers seem almost impossible." Carter smiled and manipulated the hologram to show different angles of the firing solution. "Kevin, what makes you think impossible is actually impossible? We approach this problem completely differently than anyone else would. While other civilizations focused on elegant energy solutions, we decided to make projectiles work better than anyone thought they could." "But these gravitational calculations," Price said, pointing at a particularly complex section of math. "You are accounting for stellar influences across incredible distances. Most targeting systems do not even consider gravity beyond local planetary effects." "Exactly," Carter replied. "We thought bigger. We calculated everything. Every star, every planet, every significant mass within our firing range. The targeting computer can predict projectile behavior across distances that would shock anyone who saw the full scope." Price shook his head in amazement. "If these calculations are correct, our projectile will not just hit the target. It will hit the target so precisely that we could probably thread a needle at 50,000 kilometers. Back on the monitoring station, Commander Zixathera was beginning to feel the first stirrings of doubt about her assessment of human capabilities. The energy readings Grum had shown her were far beyond what any primitive civilization should be able to generate, and her instruments were definitely not malfunctioning. "Science officer," she said formally, "please run a complete diagnostic on all our monitoring equipment. I want to be absolutely certain we are reading these power signatures correctly." Grum's massive form moved to the main console, his stone fingers surprisingly delicate as they operated the controls. "Commander, I have run 3 full diagnostics already. The equipment is functioning perfectly. The humans are somehow generating power levels that rival our own most advanced installations." Zixathara felt something she had not experienced in centuries of observing primitive species: genuine confusion. "That should not be possible. Their technology appears primitive by every measure we use. How could they possibly achieve such energy output? Perhaps, Grum said slowly, our measures are incomplete. Across the galaxy, technical analyst Vorp of the silicon synthesis was having similar troubles with impossible readings. The crystalline, being interfaced directly with monitoring computers, becoming one with the data streams that flowed through galactic observation networks. What those streams told him made no sense, according to established scientific principles. Vorp transmitted his confusion to the collective consciousness of his people. The energy patterns from the human test suggest technologies we do not recognize. Their approach to electromagnetic field generation follows principles that seem theoretically sound, but practically impossible for their development level. The response from the silicon synthesis was immediate and concerned. If Vorp could not understand something, it usually meant the something was genuinely unprecedented. The collective began paying much closer attention to the small blue planet in the Sol system. On Liberty's edge, Captain Murphy was reviewing final system checks with his weapons officer while trying to ignore the growing excitement he felt about the test. Lieutenant Amy Foster had spent weeks familiarizing herself with the railgun controls, but nothing could really prepare someone for firing a weapon that had never been tested at full power. "Captain," Foster said, "all firing systems show green, across the board. The magnetic field generators are operating at 100% efficiency. Targeting solutions are locked and confirmed." "What about the projectile itself?" Murphy asked, checking his command displays. Dr. Carter's team made some unusual modifications to the tungsten rod. Sergeant Ryan Clark answered from the engineering station. "Sir, the crystalline matrix integration is stable and ready. I still do not fully understand what Dr. Carter did to that projectile, but every simulation suggests it will perform far beyond standard tungsten rod specifications." Murphy nodded and opened a communication channel to Dr. Carter's laboratory. "Doctor, we are ready to proceed whenever you give the word. Your baby is about to take its first flight." Carter's voice came back calm and confident. "Captain, this is not just a first flight. This is humanity announcing to the universe that we solve problems differently than everyone else. The galaxy is about to learn that primitive does not mean ineffective." Admiral Bolton entered the command center at that moment, accompanied by several other high-ranking officers who had come to witness what they hoped would be a successful test. The Admiral had seen many weapon demonstrations in his career, but something about Dr. Carter's confidence made him suspect this would be unlike anything he had experienced before. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bolton announced to the assembled officers, "today we find out whether 3 years of work and billions of dollars have produced something worthwhile, or the most expensive fireworks display in human history." Dr. Carter appeared on the main screen from her laboratory, surrounded by displays showing calculations that looked more like abstract art than mathematics. "Admiral, with respect, I believe we are about to demonstrate that human engineering can achieve things the textbooks say are impossible." "Bold claim, Doctor," Bolton replied. "I hope you can back it up." Carter smiled in a way that made everyone in the command center pay attention. "Admiral, our projectile is not just going to hit the target. It is going to hit the target so perfectly that we will rewrite the physics textbooks. And that is just the beginning of what this test will accomplish." The countdown reached its final minutes while across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched, with varying degrees of interest and amusement. None of them suspected that they were about to witness something that would force them to question everything they thought they knew about primitive species and the limitations of projectile weapons. The universe was about to discover that sometimes the most advanced solution is the one nobody expects.